So as it turns out, I have copy 0000 of 6,000 of perhaps the greatest version of the greatest album in pop rock history. Sorry, Michael. Hi, I'm Bob. Welcome back to United States of Analog. Hey, today we're going to do something a little different. This is going to be more podcasty because this is something that's really personal to me. And I just want to be able to kind of relax, breathe, not be so rushed, not read a script, look over notes or anything. I'm going to come right off the top of my head to tell you about a great new release from Capitol Records, DSS Definitive Sound Series. See, I'm already speeding up. I need to breathe and relax. So what I'm saying is we may be here for a while exploring this record. So grab a sandwich, something to drink, relax, and, let's dig in. Okay, this just came out. This is from Capitol Records, Universal Music Group, Beach Boys, Pet Sounds, Definitive Sound Series, One Step, coming in at $100. You might remember my Lionel Richie review of that DSS a couple of weeks ago. Well, this is the next in the line, hopefully the long line of releases that Capitol, Interscope, the Universal Music Group is going to be doing. And this just happens to be maybe, possibly, if not the first, in my list of greatest albums, maybe second, could be first today. This is an amazing copy of the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds that was released on May 16th, 1966. So this Saturday is the 60th anniversary. And this is a little different than some of the other versions, but we'll get into it. Let me talk a little bit about the Beach Boys to begin with, because I've said it many times on my radio show, and I'll say it here. If you say you don't like the Beach Boys, well, I don't know if I can trust you. Now, I have lots of friends when I bring up the Beach Boys, they conjure up images of Surfing USA and Fun, and all those songs. Those were fun. Those were cute. Those were cute little beach surfing songs that the Beach Boys did at the beginning. But if you, like me, stuck with the Beach Boys long enough into the late 60s, the mid 70s, you were rewarded with some incredible music, like Holland, which had The Traitor on it, which had Sail on Sailor, Surf's Up, Disney Girls, Surf's Up, Till I Die, just a wealth of material. And there have been many versions, I guess, of the Beach Boys. The core has always been there. Now they're all gone now, but Brian Wilson, of course, the genius, the mastermind of the Beach Boys, who suffered much for his art and suffered much personally, but in the end kind of persevered. He's gone now, but man, did he leave us with just a treasure trove of great tunes. And I don't even want, great albums, actually, because this was the dawn of the album era, 1966. Everything was focused on singles, before that. And this put the Beach Boys, well, they were already in a competition with their Capitol mates in America, the Beatles, but there was this back and forth going on. You know the story, you've seen the documentaries, but the Beach Boys inspired the Beatles inspired the Beach Boys, and they fired back with Pet Sounds, or at least Brian Wilson did, and I'll explain that in a second. Now, there are over, by my count and research, over 400 different release versions of Pet Sounds since 1966. We're talking about releases on, vinyl, on 8-track, cassette, reel-to-reel tape, CDs, mini discs, and who knows what else. But that's 400 versions of this album, some in mono, as it was originally recorded, some in stereo, some in fake stereo. And I can't even really explain that, except that was the technology back in the 60s. I think the Beatles may have been guilty of using it. I can't remember the name of the process. If I have time, I'll put it down here in the graphics. Yeah, 400 versions. So how do you determine what the best version of a record is? I'm not even gonna go there. I'm gonna say this is good enough for me. It's more than good enough for me. Now, Analog Productions in Chad, out there in Salinas, Kansas, he about a decade ago, maybe a little under a decade, re-released a lot of the Beach Boys catalog, some in 45 RPM, original mono, maybe even the stereo. He had a lot of Beach Boy releases, and I have not had the pleasure of hearing his 45 RPM version, which I believe was taken by Kevin Gray from one of the 1966 masters. And I think any copy of Pet Sounds that you get should probably be mono over the stereo. I know the mono is not something that we use or listen to very often, but in the day, it was the mono version that was king. AM radio was king. AM radio at that time was still in mono. FM album radio hadn't really started yet. It was on the verge, but it hadn't penetrated deeply, if I can say that. But the mono version is the one to get. And I would say the same for many of the early Beatles albums as well, because when it came down to it, when the mono mix of Pet Sounds was done, when the Sgt. Pepper's Beatles mono mix was done, it's been reported that Brian just didn't have the energy to hang on to do the stereo mix. And the Beatles, I think, from the books I've read, and I've read a lot of books about the Beatles and the Beach Boys, they more inclined to head around the corner to the pub and have a pint than stick around for the stereo mixes, which they really didn't have any interest in. Audiophile stuff really wasn't happening yet. Most people were listening to tunes on the radio, maybe small record players, mono record players or whatever. We hadn't fully engaged the hi-fi vibe yet. So mono was important. That's what Brian Wilson heard in his head. And by the way, one of the reasons might have been, and I had read that Brian Wilson was at least partially, if not deaf, in one ear. Kind of a Beethoven thing going on there. And maybe that's why he didn't really have use for stereo recordings. The music he was imagining and he was hearing was in that kind of wall of sound, Phil Spector mono that he liked. He was also a fan of many groups, many of those vocal groups in the 50s and early 60s. So it's interesting that we bring up Phil Spector here because, well, Brian Wilson used a lot of those Phil Spector musicians, the Wrecking Crew, in the LA studios at the time to record Pet Sounds. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, Bob, but didn't the Beach Boys, did they pull a Monkees thing and the Beach Boys aren't on Pet Sounds? Well, yeah, they are on Pet Sounds. It's their vocals, and maybe they added some tambourine or something like that. But Brian Wilson didn't even think of himself as a good enough musician to fulfill the music that he had in his head, because he used the best studio musicians outside of Motown to do this record, the Wrecking Crew. You know some of the names. I know you do. Now, I don't think this was accidental at all. I think this was part of Brian Wilson's master plan in order to, get this music recorded the way he heard it in his head and onto record. He sent the Beach Boys out to tour without him, touring the country, singing those surfing songs that I talked about, while he started developing a whole new Beach Boys sound, developing a masterpiece in the studio. It's been reported that Brian only played bass on one track. You Still Believe in Me, I believe it was. And there were other bass players involved. The great Carol Kay played on 7 tracks, including Wouldn't It Be Nice and the amazing God Only Knows. And then Ray Pullman. There was also a stand-up bassist that was used. Of course, you got Hal Blaine on drums. Who knows who's in the background vocals? It could have been Cher, could have been Sonny Bono. There was all kinds of people, names that you know. Leon Russell occasionally played keyboards for the Wrecking Crew. Not sure if he's on here or not. Do your own research, because it is a deep dive that you will thoroughly enjoy. Almost, if not even more interesting than the Beatles story. The Beach Boys story is just amazing. There are plenty of books to dig into, and I will recommend The Nearest Faraway Place as a good book to start with. Yeah, Brian knew his limitations as a bass player, and I think he wanted to keep his hands free to conduct. He wanted something melodic, symphonic, bold, wall of sound. But I think he even got more when it was all said and done. He contributed instruments on other tracks, but left the bass to the greats. There's a lot to unpack, especially when it comes to Brian Wilson. So all that being said, you can tell that I am a huge Beach Boys and Pet Sounds fan. Again, don't sleep on Surf's Up. This is a great analog production version, 45 RPM. I believe, no, could be a 45 RPM. Not sure, I'll have to check into that. This isn't an OG, but this is just a standard Capitol reissue of Pet Sounds in mono. What do you think of the cover, by the way? Maybe for its time it was pretty good, but it seems like they didn't put as much effort into the cover as they did into the music. Yeah, you know, there's animals on there. I get it. They're at the zoo. Pet sounds. I get it. Petting zoo. I get it. We get it, Brian. This is an OG. Now, I don't know if this is an original or not. It's got a tip-on jacket and little Deuce Coupe. I don't know why I have this reissue at all, but it's got some good early tunes. I mentioned Surf's Up already, and of course, one of my favorite albums from the 70s that they did, Holland with Sail on Sailor and all that. Don't sleep on mid-70s, early 70s Beach Boys at all. I even like Kokomo, and I think that came much later. Brian Wilson said that he wished that he was on that track. He was absent during those sessions from what I understand. So now we've had 400 versions of Pet Sounds over the years. And we had the great analog production versions taken from those 1966 master tapes from Kevin Gray. I understand that the sound may be a little more spacious on those, and the vocals, though, may be a little more recessed than what we're going to get here. But let's talk about 2026, and let's talk about this one of 6,000 Pet Sounds Definitive Sound Series one-step process on Japanese super vinyl. We'll get into the specific super vinyl formulation in a second, but it's all here. It's a beautiful package. It's $99. I know that's going to be a barrier for a lot of people. I'm sure there was a time when I couldn't imagine spending $99 or $150. Some one-steps are even more expensive than this. But this will set you back $100. It is worth every penny, and I hope when you decide to pull the trigger on this one that it is still available. I believe that this, even at 6,000 copies, when the word gets out, is going to sell out fast, and it will be highly collectible. And I don't think, I have no official notification or basis to think it, but I don't think, knowing how licensing works, that they will reissue this album in this format, in the box as a one-step or whatever. It may be 6,000 and done. Now, Capitol may make some new pressings of Pet Sounds, but that's up to them. I'm glad I have this one. And why do I have 0000 of 6,000? Well, it seems like it might be special, and for collectors down the road, it might be. Now, I will never release this album. I will never sell this album, give it away, trade it, loan it, do anything. And hopefully, Universal Music Group isn't going to ask for this copy back. But I think 0000 is like a painting that says AP or artist proof. I think the review copies that they sent out were probably all stamped 0000. But it still made my heart just kind of explode when I, opened the box and saw the number. I think that's pretty damn cool. And I want to thank the folks at Capitol. I mean, one of the highlights of my channel so far in the last 3 years is starting to develop a relationship with Capitol Records, an iconic label. And they reached out to me, noticed my channel, knew that I was a Beach Boys fan, even though I didn't pay for this particular copy. These thoughts are my own. At the end of the day, Pet Sounds is all about the music. And I don't care what version of Pet Sounds you happen to get or happen to find. But the music's the same. How it's presented could be different, but the music's the same. It's a masterpiece. Whether you get a scratched up copy, a beat up copy, a weird remastering, a fake stereo version, or whatever, the music is the music, and it's still a masterpiece across the board. But what if you could hear this record, Pet Sounds, in its most pristine, super quiet, super dynamic, super in your face? What if you could hear it in that kind of version? And what makes this particular record, and I'm going to show you what comes in the box in a second, what makes this Pet Sounds particularly interesting, and I don't want to let everything out of the bag because, well, Capitol Records didn't have time to change the inside of the cover, but the Lionel Richie record I reviewed, I mentioned that I thought there should be pictures of the tape box, more liner notes, maybe interviews, more insight into the recording. And you get that with this version of Pet Sounds. I'll show it to you in a second. But what I wanted to say is that this comes from 1972 masters. Now, what makes 1972 special, and why could this be more special than the versions pressed from the 1966 original masters? Well, the Beach Boys started their own label, Brother Records, and they had control now over their own catalog. And I like to think that Brian just finally figured out that it was time to make the ultimate version of Pet Sounds. And that version, that 1972 version, I believe, was packaged with a record from the late 70s called Carl and the Passions So Tough, which isn't bad. I kind of enjoyed Carl and the Passions, but it was sold as like a double album, 2 albums for the price of 1. So using maybe Pet Sounds to sell Carl and the Passions or vice versa. But there was a different cover, I believe. The 1972 version could be closer to what Brian Wilson had in his head. It didn't fully come out in 1966. Went in, remastered it, and re-released it. So those Carl and the Passion Pet Sounds records are very coveted. It's considered to be one of the best versions at that time, and even much later. Since then, we've had lots of CD versions and lots of different remixings. But again, not to let too much out of the bag, there's some pretty good liner notes in here that explain how they arrived at this master. So it's a one-step. That means they took that master tape, which was redone from the 1966 multi-tracks, I'm assuming. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a one-step. That master was used to cut the lacquer, and the lacquer was used to make the stampers. So with that, we'll take a look at what's inside, and I'll give you my impressions of the sound. And then I'll give you like one fact that you may not know about each of the songs on Pet Sounds. That could be fun. Let's do that. Definitive Sound Series. Best sounding Pet Sounds ever released, and that's from Michael Fremer. That's a quote from him. Pressed in monophonic sound, one-step processing, pinnacle of vinyl manufacturing, numbered one-time pressing of 6,000. So this is a one-time pressing. Get it if you can. Renowned superior sound quality, reveals more musical clarity and detail. Ultra-low surface noise, meticulous craftsmanship in every aspect. Certificate of authenticity included. Transparent details listed on the back. You get the analog rating here. You get a downsized version here of the original cover. The border here is glossy and matte. You got the DSS. You can't really see it too well in the video here. I'll try to get a close-up. I'm not going to shoot a whole lot of B-roll on this video. It's a nice package, very similar to the Lionel Richie. It's color correct as far as it being, green and really capturing the vibe of Pet Sounds. And again, I'm just excited to have a 0000. Probably be the only one ever in my collection. This was remastered by Chris Bellman at Bernie Grunman, as was the Lionel Richie and a lot of the other DSS recordings, and pressed at RTI, which is always a good thing. Now you get this beautiful matte cover. What I love about the matte cover is you're not going to get fingerprints on it. It's got a very nice feel to it. And I'm sure it's not showing much reflection there. It's great for under the lights. And then you open it up. It's a gatefold. It is this little press sheet they sent me, which I will covet. We'll talk about the certificate of authenticity in a second. It's a tip-on gatefold. You open it up. You see that other Pet Sounds cover there. I kind of like the brown. It looks more artistic for some reason. They don't have all the text. Maybe they should have went with that one. But again, I don't want to spoil anything. They've got a lot of liner notes here and how they landed on the 1972 version. And you get pictures of the masters where the lacquers were cut at Artisan. This was the tip-off. They knew that when they found the Artisan master that they had found 1972 gold, and it's one of the reasons why this version exists. What I love and hate about tip-on gatefolds is that it's not going to do it now, but when you first open it, you get a little crackle. The glue or something comes, just kind of loosens up or something, and you get a little crackle. I noticed that with the Tone Poets too. But a lot of times you also get, and I'll show you a picture, you also get a little inside split seam. Doesn't ruin the experience for me. It's not perfect. It happens a lot with tip-on gatefolds, but you'll get that split seam in the middle. Seams are golden on the outside, and then you have the regular Pet Sounds back cover that I believe is exactly the same. I'm pretty sure it's the same. I'm not going to dig that out for you right now. There you go. That's just a beautiful, beautiful, heavyweight tip-on gatefold jacket in matte with lots of information inside. And you get the certificate of authenticity. And again, I'll say it, Capitol Records, Interscope, UMG. Let's handwrite. Let's handwrite or hand stamp the serial number on this certificate. I think it would make it that much more special. Or maybe have Chris Bellman sign it. How cool would that be? And then here I got all the press information. The vinyl formulations, Neotech VR 900-D2, 180 gram vinyl. And let's look at the record itself. I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to treat this thing. I thought about wearing gloves for this video. Don't want to damage this whatsoever. I'm thinking of buying another copy just to have sealed. I don't want to hoard or anything, but it's worth it. This is it. See, I almost dropped it right there. Yeah, see, I know it's super vinyl. You're not going to be able to see it here. And maybe unless I hold it up to the light here. It's a little translucent. That's one of the ways you can tell this is kind of super vinyl. In the dead wax there, I can see through it. I can see the camera. Chris Bellman, CB, etched into the dead wax. It's 33 1/3, if I didn't mention that, and it is, for my money, dead quiet on my MoFi Studio deck with the Master Tracker cartridge. I'm gonna load up a moving coil cartridge in that turntable very soon and reassess this record, but man, it is quiet, flat, quieter than a regular record. Now, that may not mean anything to anybody. And again, no matter what version you get, it is still a masterpiece. Yeah, this pressing is a masterpiece of a masterpiece. And you can quote me on that, Capitol Records. That's a pretty damn good quote. A masterpiece of a masterpiece. I came up with that. Let's see, what else can I say about this? On a lot of tracks, you're getting that wall of sound feeling. And I think that's something that Brian Wilson was going for, as he was a Phil Spector fan. It's not as dense as the Phil Spector recordings. There's a little more air, a little more space between the instruments, but it is dynamic, it is bold, it is in your face. The vocals are up front, and let's face it, the vocals are one of the stars of the show here. It's Brian Wilson, it's the Beach Boys harmony. They finally got into the studio later. When they got off a tour exhausted, he drug them back in the studio to do the vocals. But all of the instrumentation, including the bass, Carol Kay's bass is amazing. God Only Knows and Wouldn't It Be Nice, just 2 of the 7 tracks that she played on. Just unbelievable. The Wrecking Crew, another great documentary that you can watch, another great book that you can read. If you don't know about the Wrecking Crew, I highly recommend it. So the vocals are up front. The sound is spacious but bold. I'm noticing a lot more of that high detail. Triangles, bells, cymbals. They used a lot of different instruments in the recording of Pet Sounds. Sound effects. You're getting everything that could possibly be squeezed out of that master tape on this version. I'm not saying it's better or worse than Chad's version at all. I don't know. It's not fair for me to say. You can do the A/B testing, but even if I A/B tested it on my equipment with my ears, it wouldn't be your equipment or your ears. So really, I know people like to do that. They like to do throwdowns, but I think that's kind of silly because it's apples and oranges. I can just tell you this is an extremely pleasurable experience to listen to this album. I listened to it 3 times yesterday alone, and I just get more out of that record than I ever have with this Definitive Sound Series version. Now remember, I'm not getting paid. I may get to keep this record. I don't know, but I wouldn't lie to you. I mean, what kind of friend would I be if I lied to you? This is great. This is incredible. From the packaging to the liner notes to the photography to the matte cover to the box it comes in to the certificate, everything. Could there be more goodies in there? Sure. $100. They could put some stickers in there, or something. I don't know what, but this is just a delight. And there are times that I've sat down and thought to myself, wow, how lucky am I that I got to live in the time of the Beatles and the Beach Boys, right? Now, maybe on another timeline of my life, I lived in the age of Mozart or something, and I was saying the same thing on my YouTube channel back then. But, how lucky are we that we got this music in our lifetime? And if you haven't heard Pet Sounds yet, if that's even possible, get this or get another copy. It doesn't matter to me. But if you say you don't like the Beach Boys, again, I'll tell you,
I don't trust you.
And don't sleep on some of their other great stuff. You may have to dig. There are periods of the Beach Boys where you've got to dig deep because you've got the 3 brothers. You've got the brilliant genius in songwriting acumen of Brian Wilson. You've got the rebellious Dennis Wilson on drums, and you've got the angelic voice of Carl Wilson, who was also a very good songwriter. You've got the 3 brothers and the cousin Mike Love. And say what you will about Mike Love. He gets a lot of grief, and he's been pretty hard on himself over the years. Imagine your whole career having to listen to the fact that your bandmate was a genius, but I will give him credit. He was the frontman of the Beach Boys for a long time. He kept the band going when Brian didn't really want to be part of the touring band. Brian never wanted to be a frontman. So we should recognize Mike Love's greatness. But yeah, it's been hard on that guy listening to Brian's a genius, Brian's a genius, Brian's a genius, Brian's a genius. Imagine that. Imagine being at a party and everybody was calling your wife a genius and no one was saying anything about you. That would be horrible. I would hate that. It's actually happened to me a couple of times. Anyway, I don't know what to say, man. I am so stoked about this release. I'm not even kidding. And I think you should get it. I mean, this could be an heirloom, right? It is an heirloom. And don't buy it to flip it. Don't be one of those people. Get it to enjoy it. Open it up. Listen to it over and over again on the best gear that you have possible. Get this one. Get a different one. It doesn't matter. Enjoy Pet Sounds. Thank you for being here in the United States of Analog. I think I've said everything I want to say. Is the light behind me out? When the blue light goes out, I know I've talked too much. I'm going to put up my review of the DSS Lionel Richie record I did a couple weeks ago. It's going to be right here, right in this area. Thanks for being here, man. Our community is growing so fast. Thanks to Capitol Records for noticing me. Thanks to you guys, too, for noticing me. It's a great community we're building. I'm so proud of it. I'm proud of you. And I'm kind of proud of me. We'll see you next time right here in United States of Analog. Cheers.